this is definitely for educational purposes, making this video, and I have to say for educational purposes because to keep it going, because it is a very hot topic among all the people of the world. Science versus God. God, the creator of all things. Many people, many atheists, even many Christians lose their faith due to science and what they claim to discredit or disprove God and his existence. So this is science versus God in a nutshell. And I'm going to put it in easy terms for all to understand. So if it seems childish, it is because it is a childish subject and easy to comprehend. But people are taking it way far out with the overthinking. But it is as simple as this. A giraffe always existed before man studied it and said that is a giraffe. The giraffe always ate the leaves from the tree before man decided to study it and said, hey, it's a scientific fact that the giraffes eat the leaves from the trees. That's why their necks are so long. Without man and its scientific knowledge stating that it was a scientific fact due to studying it, the giraffe always existed and always ate from the tree, with or without that scientific knowledge. That is what scientists and what the world likes to use scientists to say would be true or false. But the problem is that all these things that scientists try to prove or discredit, saying that God didn't create or existed without studying it. And it will continue to exist whether man studies it or not. Here's the problem about saying that God didn't create this, that the world started with the Big Bang Theory, or that we evolved from monkeys. It's the most ignorant thing that could ever existed, and to believe such things just shows your lack of intelligence. And I'm not saying this to be cruel or mean to anybody who believes in such theories, but without God's creation there would be no science. God isn't studying science. God isn't studying what man made, what man has created. It is the other way around. It is man that is studying God's existence and his creation. Without the things that God created, there would be no science. Now I know some of you are going to say, oh, there's plenty of things that man invented, that man created. Sure, yes there is. But those things would not exist or would have not have been created if man didn't take something that God had already created and used it, combined it with another creation, or combined it with so-called man-made creation to get A or B or C. The moment that man takes a hold of nothing and then combines it with a thing of nothing, and it equals a creation, is the moment that man actually created something, which there is no such thing, because you can't take nothing and add it with nothing to create something. Everything that they have created started at some point that belonged to something that God had already created and already existed, that they combined and to change it into many different forms that made this creation, that created this creation, and combined it with this creation and combined it to this creation, and then that's why this and this and this exist. It only exists because they took something that God had already created. Science is nothing that's man-made knowledge. This is the same scientific facts or theory or proofs that can't make up their mind on what is true and what is false. You know why? Because they didn't create it. God did. It was already in existence. So they're taking something that already existed, something that was already created, and try to claim it as their own and say, we're going to call it this and we're going to call it that because we are scientists and we say that this is a such and such. Oh, Pluto was a planet. Now it's not. You didn't create Pluto. It was already there. It already existed. This is the same scientists that tell you that these things are healthy for you. And now, all of a sudden you can't eat the red apples because it can cause you cancer. But an apple a day keeps the doctor away. These are the same scientists who can't make up their mind. Why? Because they didn't create what God has created. They're studying what God has created. And out of pure jealousy, man's intelligence, who cannot keep up with God and his intelligence, tries to recreate everything that he has done. Hence why they try to clone things, because they cannot recreate life. They cannot create life at all, because God is the creator of all living things and the creator of life. And so they try to imitate that. And the closest they can come is robots, mechanics, mechanistic things, cars that make us run as fast as horses so we can get from place to place. Without God, there would be no science. Without God's creation, man-made knowledge would cease to exist because there would be nothing for man to study. All of science has done nothing but study and try to understand what God has created. It's tried to recreate what God has already created. Science has done nothing but try to imitate God's work, try to claim God's work as its own, and is either try to discredit that God even existed so they can place themselves as God by acting like it created these things, that God didn't exist, that somehow science has created all things in a little sense by doing so. When you really look at it and when you use common knowledge, common sense, and put it all together, you'll come to the sense that's right in front of your eyes, the truth that is in plain sight, because truth cannot be hidden. Truth will always be there from generation to generation, and the word is truth. And in the beginning, God created all things. Without God, there would be nothing. It would be void. It would be black. Nothing would exist. And that is the truth. And to sit there and use the excuse that you can't believe in a God because there is no scientific proof that God exists is ridiculous. Because without God and his existence and his creation, science wouldn't exist. And that is God versus science in a nutshell. And you didn't need a scientific fact to prove that. That's just the truth. That's just God's word. And it's told you since the beginning of time that in the beginning there was God. And God created all things. And without him, nothing existed.